Tonight, a tentative deal averts a strike, keeping schools open tomorrow.
This is not about unions winning or government winning. It's about our kids, and they're going to be in class.
The Union for Education Workers called off their strike after a last-minute deal that's giving parents a reprieve tonight. Plus,
honor and respect trans people. Trans people are just human.
This year's Transgender Day of Remembrance comes after a mass shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado. That tragedy was on the minds of many at events here in Toronto to mark the significance of the day. And
it feels thrilling, it feels exciting, and it feels long overdue.
The long-awaited chance to catch Canada at the World Cup was enough for that soccer fan to head on a marathon plane ride from Toronto to see the action in person.
This is CBC Late Night News.
In-person school is a go tomorrow. The government and education workers have avoided a strike, at least for now. They reached a tentative deal just at the last minute, right before the evening's deadline. And while the government is saying that it's a good day, the head of the union is certainly not happy, and some members are already signaling that they are going to vote against the tentative deal. Meg Roberts has our top story tonight.
This is a positive outcome for all the parties, but the biggest beneficiary of this deal is our kids.
Good news for everyone, Ontario's education minister said after announcing a tentative deal had been met with the union representing education workers. The union with a different message.
Listen, as a mom, I don't like this deal. As a worker, I don't like this deal. As the president of the OSBCU, I understand why this is the deal that's on the table. I think it falls short. I think it's terrible that we live in a world that doesn't see the need to provide services to kids that they need.
Despite finding a middle ground on wages, the union says the deal doesn't include guaranteed staffing levels, which was a priority for CUPE heading into negotiations this weekend. Pressure mounted earlier this month after a mass union mobilization at Queen's Park. The government had introduced legislation to force a contract on workers and prevent a strike, but ultimately backpedaled. Negotiations began again this weekend, but the union says it was the same offer as the one delivered last week, and now it will defer to its members to make a decision on it.
It's not good.
Some, like Terry Stack, a supply caretaker in Toronto, says he's lost confidence in the union. He's part of a small group of union members that's formed, trying to push a deal for higher wages.
What have they been negotiating the last 5 days? Yeah, this is nowhere near acceptable. It's not doesn't meet our demands and what we need.
Despite no strike tomorrow, some parents still feel uncertainty for the coming weeks.
It's like a merry-go-round. Yeah.
Is that how you feel?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think the kids feel that way too. It's very depressing for the kids and for the parents. You know, most of the parents, they're working. And just the idea of the kids sitting at home doing online school, it's not, a good idea. So hopefully they will solve it.
CUPE says it expects voting to begin by Thursday and completed by next weekend. The union could then go back to the bargaining table, but would have to give the government another 5-day heads up before striking. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
In Etobicoke, a man is dead following a shooting this evening. It happened just before 6 p.m. near Finch and Highway 427. Police say they were called to an apartment building and found a man suffering from gunshot wounds. He died on the scene. They're not releasing any suspect information at this point. Anyone with information, though, is asked to come forward. An Oakville high school was threatened with violence again this weekend. The Halton District School Board is alerting parents today. They say they're working with police and are monitoring the school around the clock. On Wednesday, Oakville Trafalgar High School was shut down after receiving a bomb threat. It's been the center of a controversy after this video of a teacher appearing to be wearing large prosthetic breastplates went viral online. The school board adding that they're taking every precaution to ensure the safety of all students and staff. To Ottawa now, and this week the Prime Minister will be among a list of heavyweight witnesses set to testify at the Emergencies Act inquiry. In addition to Trudeau, the inquiry will also hear from his inner circle of cabinet ministers and political staff. It's trying to determine if the government was justified in invoking the act to end last winter's protests in downtown Ottawa and at several border points. Over the previous weeks, the Commission has heard about confusion and conflict from within the protest movement and alleged mismanagement by police leaders. The MPP for Ottawa Centre is apologizing tonight for comments he made about Israel that the Jewish community says are anti-Semitic. The NDP's Joel Harden made the remarks during an interview with the Ottawa Forum on Israel-Palestine about a year ago.
I think the single greatest origin of violence in the Middle East, it is unquestionably the state of Israel and the way in which they feel absolutely no shame in defying international law, doing whatever they want.
That video resurfaced on social media recently and sparked backlash from Jewish groups, including the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. That group tweeted that Harden's comments spread anti-Semitism and misinformation about Israel. In his apology, Harden says, "I regret my choice of words and sincerely apologize to the Jewish community." He goes on to say, "You have my commitment that it will not happen again." Now, following Harden's apology, the Jewish group is now calling for the removal of any elected official who persistently spreads anti-Semitism. And meanwhile, the interim NDP leader says that Harden's comments were unacceptable and hurtful, but stopped short of removing him from the party. To the tragedy in Colorado now, and 5 people are dead, 25 more injured after a shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub south of Denver. Police are suggesting it could have been even worse. They say 2 clubgoers fought the gunman, and then police apprehended him just minutes after the shooting started. The nightclub has called the shooting an attack on the queer community. Police say it is being investigated as a possible hate crime, but they have not officially determined a motive. That tragedy was on the minds of many people here today as well, especially those marking the 23rd Transgender Day of Remembrance. The day is meant to remember people who have been murdered in acts of transphobia the year prior and aims to draw attention to the ongoing violence faced by members of the trans community. Tyler Cheese shows us the events in Toronto today.
A somber day kicks off with the raising of the trans pride flag at City Hall.
We gather here every year, and it is to stand together against hate and to remember the lives that have been lost.
Mayor Tory pledging to remain an ally to the community in light of yesterday's shooting at an LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado.
These kinds of things that seemingly try to not only reject but to direct hatred and direct discrimination against people who are just trying to be their own true selves are just not acceptable and have no place in our city.
This afternoon, the 519 Community Center on Church Street hosting a vigil to honor trans lives lost, including those in the Two-Spirit community.
Over the years, we've evolved to include Two-Spirit, to recognize Indigenous rights in Canada, especially important, racialized and Indigenous members. Who are more disproportionately living in precarious situations, exposed to the hate and violence.
The 519 says almost 400 deaths were reported in the last year in trans communities around the world, and many more go unreported. The number of trans people murdered in the United States has also nearly doubled in the past 4 years. The group notes that local data isn't available, but they say the trends match what they've experienced.
Honor and respect trans people. Trans people are just human. We're just here, we're living. We don't want the same things. We want to live an honorable and safe life.
They also say they want more support from the public and from elected officials. Just last week, the provincial government shot down the Gender-Affirming Healthcare Act. The NDP proposed the legislation, saying it would improve healthcare access to people of all genders.
Unfortunately, it did not pass, and which is very, I would say, extremely disappointing. The trans and gender diverse community has never seen themselves adequately and fully reflected in the access to health care.
In the meantime, the 519 says events like today's are held to send a message to everyone. Trans rights are human rights. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, in Toronto's East End, a memorial walk to honor and remember people who have been killed or severely injured in road violence and to call on the government for safer streets.
This is my dad, John Bates. He was killed October 30th, a year ago.
Each one of those long list of names represent an unbelievable amount of human grief and pain and suffering, all of which could have been prevented by building safe streets.
I'd like to see
more done in the streets of Toronto, our safer streets for our families, everybody.
The walk is held every year on World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. Along the walk on the Danforth, organizers spoke about improvements to the city's Vision Zero road safety plan. That initiative launched in 2016 and has the goal of reducing traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries on Toronto streets. All right, a brutally cold day today. Kevin McKay is here now from the Weather Network. Kevin, we're in for a bit of warmer temperatures, right?
Yeah, we've certainly had the worst behind us, and what a stretch of snowy days it was. This was a look at our satellite from just Sunday afternoon. That was our main squall that still was bringing incredible snow. We had about 30 centimeters on the north side of the GTA, and here's some of our big totals. Wyerton set some records, but the big one, south of Buffalo, over 2 meters of snow over the span of 4 days. This is putting the 2014 situation to shame. And when you have to deal with that kind of snow, it's nice to actually get a record out of it. As we head towards the work week, Monday, we are going to see some flurries coming through. Not worrying about anything in terms of accumulations. If you get anything in the GTA, it's going to be after the evening commute, so don't have to worry about that. What we do get to enjoy is the rebounding temperatures back above the freezing mark to start the week, and we're just going to stay there for probably the next week or even 2 weeks. We should be right around 5 degrees, so we can definitely be accepting those for the next couple days here.
Sweater too, I like it, Kevin, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Canada's biggest night in football is in the books, and Toronto has a lot to celebrate. It was a nail-biter, a last-minute field goal attempt decided this year's Grey Cup. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers kicking for a victory, the Toronto Argonauts hoping for a miracle.
Academic, if he makes it, Winnipeg will take the lead. Partially blocked as well.
And that was the moment. The ball was blocked. The Argos grabbed it, and with just 45 seconds left, they weren't giving it back. Just a few plays earlier, Winnipeg had blocked a Toronto field goal attempt. It all capped a fourth-quarter Argo comeback led by replacement quarterback Chad Kelly. Final score, Argos 24, Blue Bombers 23. Here's Sam Sampson from Regina.
This win means that the Toronto Argonauts now have a 7 Grey Cup winning streak. So for the past 7 times that they've been to the final, they have won. And that is huge. That's according to the president of the Friends of the Argonauts fan club that I was speaking to earlier this week. She said this win could grow the fan base in a city that really has a lot of different options for sports fans. And I'll tell you, if they weren't watching the CFL before, this game could change that. Such a dramatic game right to the end, but as we mentioned, the Toronto Argonauts came out on top, and they are the 2022 CFL champions. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
All right, now to the other big sports story of the day. The FIFA Men's World Cup has kicked off in Qatar. The home team, though, lost 2-0 to Ecuador. It is the first time a host has lost its opening game. For a look now at what's ahead over the next month, here's CBC's Thomas Dagg.
Messi! Messi! Here it is, both a tournament of dreams for soccer fans and a human rights nightmare for critics. The Men's World Cup staged for the first time in the blazing sun of the Middle East.
I'm really excited.
Very excited for us, for everybody.
Yes.
On day one, no fan has lost hope yet. Every nation dares to believe.
Qatar win Qatar, inshallah.
Obviously, we'd all love to say that we could win it.
Yes, this time even Canadians can wish.
I'm just hoping that Canada pull a big surprise.
Any team to be here is achievement.
For the first time in 36 years, the Maple Leaf is flying to represent a qualified nation. Bahram Farhang and Baman Bayat flew in from Toronto, but they sure thought twice about their visit.
We're hoping that this pushed the government of Qatar to be more inclusive. Everyone is speaking up. Maybe that would do something.
All around tournament sites, migrant workers are still toiling in the sun. Laborers endured brutal, sometimes deadly conditions to build all this sparkling infrastructure. Doha's new metro, its new airport, 7 new stadiums, all on the backs of migrant workers.
This is a mega event like no other. As I say, it's a nation-building project for Qatar as much as it is anything else.
With more than 1 million visitors bound for Doha, some are staying on cruise ships docked in the port, others flying in from Dubai on match days.
Or how about a stay in a glorified shipping container presented as a cabin?
$200 US a night will get you one of these. Those who've already checked in have no complaints so far.
We looked at the hotels and they were super expensive.
It is amazing. We have neighbors from all over the countries.
For a month, Qatar welcomes the world. After years of controversy, there's no stopping it now. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Doha.
So you see, some Canadians are already there as the World Cup gets underway. We caught up with one Toronto fan making the trek to see Team Canada compete in person. We saw him today at the airport just before he took off.
This is the first time in my life that I've been old enough to remember this team qualifying, and I'm absolutely thrilled about it. And I'm just going to say it right now. I think Canada's getting out of the group. I think all these other countries are underestimating Canada.
That is a lofty goal, my friend. Canada is one of 32 teams who qualified for the global competition. It has been 36 years since the team qualified for the World Cup, and a long 2 years of pandemic restrictions for that super fan.
Like many, I have not done any traveling since the pandemic started, so vacation is long overdue, and to get an opportunity to cheer on Canada, to cheer on the boys in red, I couldn't wait another 4 years for this.
And on Wednesday, the boys in red face their first biggest challenge, number 2 spot, Belgium. Good luck, Team Canada. Welcome back. There is both praise and harsh criticism tonight following the UN Climate Summit's final deal. The conference wrapped up today in Egypt, and international climate correspondent Susan Ormiston is there.
It just took so long. Inside the final COP meeting, diplomats and delegates from nearly 200 countries were spent trying to come to a consensus.
It's 5 in the morning. Most of these delegates have been negotiating for the better part of 3 days. They're exhausted, but they're still looking at text, trying to get this agreement across the line.
Wrangling a deal at these climate talks nearly failed. Tensions were rising, ministers were leaving, and disagreements behind closed doors broke into the open.
At this point, we are very worried by the state of the negotiations and what is being presented by the presidency.
But finally, they got there.
I now invite the COP to adopt the decision entitled Funding Arrangements for Responding to Loss and Damage,
committing to an historic deal, a fund to help poor countries ravaged by a severe climate, paid for by countries with high emissions, an acknowledgement of responsibility.
A serious relief. After almost 30 years, when this idea of reparation, of paying back the debt, of climate justice, of a fund, an emergency fund to support communities, countries that may be hit by disasters.
A big win for developing countries, but other players left dissatisfied.
Mr. Timmerman, we're from Canada.
The European Union, echoed by Canada, urged tougher efforts to curb CO2 emissions.
We don't speed up the reduction of our emissions. There's no amount of money on this planet that can pay for all the loss and all the damages that will be there.
And a push to phase down oil and gas was blocked.
Many don't want this topic to be raised. I'm thinking about Saudi Arabia. I'm thinking about Iran. I'm thinking about Russia.
So COP27 officially ended Sunday with mixed success, just as the baking sun was waking up over the Red Sea. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Sharm el-Sheikh.
Lots of energy and excitement at today's Santa Claus Parade, with thousands of people celebrating its return in person after 2 years of virtual events throughout the pandemic. This year, a new float making its first appearance in the parade. You can see it there, an Indigenous float showcasing their creation story. Those watching bundled up to catch a glimpse of the costumes and hear the live bands. The last but not least, the star of the show also making his appearance. That, of course, is Santa Claus himself with his team of reindeer, bringing in the holiday spirit. So certainly chilly for people out there catching the parade in person, but it certainly didn't seem to keep them away. Hey, Kevin?
Yeah, and if we're going to get snow downtown Toronto, let's at least get it on the Santa Claus parade. And boy, it came close. This isn't a mistake. Looking back at our totals over the last few days, that little void right over Toronto, we did certainly avoid the worst of it. But Sunday afternoon, look at this main band coming from King City. It got down to the DVP, basically cut the top end of Toronto right in half, but didn't quite get downtown. So some of those parade goers didn't get the perfect Christmas atmosphere, but there goes those flurries for Monday, and then we get into that southerly flow, and that is all good news. If you're wanting the warmth to return, it is on its way, and it's going to be sticking around for a while. Last week we were talking about how all that high pressure in Western Canada kind of put the brakes on any active weather across the rest of North America. Well, that is changing. We're watching this big low starting to form over northern Alberta, and that's important for us because the stronger that low gets, the more warmth it can pull up ahead of it into eastern Canada, and that's exactly what's going to happen gradually over the next 3, 4, 5 days. There's our warm sector, but behind the warm front, head of the cold front, that's where you get the best warmth. So that's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I wouldn't be surprised if someone gets to the double digits in southern Ontario. But at this time of year, if you're getting the warmth, it's going to come at a cost, and that is going to be the rain. So once we get that cloud starting to clear out, if I can give an award to any day, it's going to be Wednesday. That's when you're going to be warm and have the most sunshine. And then we're going to have the rain coming up from the south. That's going to win out. So it's going to be a wet end to the week, but it's better than the snow this week. It could be a problem for places up towards Cottage Country and Buffalo with all that snow that has to melt.
All right, so the award goes to Wednesday, though, right? I got that right?
Yep, get out there.
All right, thanks, buddy. And that is our show for tonight. Thank you for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Have a great night, everyone.